Town meeting preview for the Monday, October 15th, 2018 special town meeting. I'm Bob Price of the League of Women Voters of Westford, and I'm joined by Scott Hazelton, Jody Ross, and Dan O'Donnell, and a little later by Elizabeth Alameda. We're here to discuss the 12 motions, is it still 12?
Yes.
On the warrant for the upcoming special town meeting, and to answer any questions that you have. The first article is one that I always appreciate. It's the unpaid bills from last year. What's the news on that?
We have none. Motion to dismiss.
Nothing like making progress at lightning speed. Article 2, approve fiscal year 19 budget adjustments.
So I'll start off with this. This is actually, we're asking the town to do 3 separate things. And the first one that I'm going to speak to is we're asking the town to supplement the recycling budget. So basically, those who follow recycling, it has changed a lot over the years, and in particular over the 10 years that I've been here. The market has worsened, and so our current contract has a blended value, which basically means that we pay based on the market rate for recyclables. And early in 2018, China actually implemented a recycling ban to stop importing recycling. So that obviously created an industry-wide problem, and we have recycling pretty much everywhere that we don't know what to do with. So the cost for disposing of recycling has increased substantially, and so we are seeking $80,000 to supplement the budget for fiscal year 19, and which we hope will cover anticipated cost increases.
Any question?
Do I call on her, or do you, Bob? We don't have the rules.
No, sure.
Is
This will pick it up.
is our current cost of recycling still less than the cost of our trash removal?
Not really. I mean, those figures have gotten closer together.
They're closer, but yes, still cheaper. So we did the analysis as of June of 2018. It cost about $70.70 per ton of trash, and it's about $56 per ton of recycling at this point.
That's significant.
Okay, I was not aware that it was still that far different, but
It's creeping closer.
it is creeping closer. So, but we are mandated by the state to recycle. So many have said, "Why are we recycling?" But we are mandated to do so. So, yep.
And part 2?
So part 2 is me. So after the Newtown school shooting back about, 5 years ago, the town took a lot of action to improve our school safety, most of it under the radar, because that's how we thought it was best to do it. A lot of investment in cameras and other technology to make better safety. And of course, this year we had the incident in Parkland, Florida, which sort of redoubled our concern. We had a lot of discussion at town meeting about that. So police, fire, schools have been doing a lot of work on their own to make even further improvements. But we did form a town-wide task force in August to look at this in terms of what do we not know that we should know, and looking at the schools, but also looking at some town buildings, because we've been focusing on schools, but we've not really thought about the fact that we can have issues at town hall, at the library. We actually have had issues at the library in terms of minor issues, but certainly fears for safety. And in Rodenbush, in fact, we got a lot of children in Rodenbush on certain days, or will have once it reopens. So we expanded it to be more than just schools, but certain town buildings that have got a large public presence. We don't want to make these things hardened. We want to have interactions with customers and residents, but there are things we should be doing to make sure that our staff is safer than they are today. And looking at basically 2 different pieces. One is, what do you do for infrastructure to make them safer, perhaps staff to make them safer? And secondly, every school shooting has involved a mental health component, typically one that was generally known to be an issue and not acted upon. So we're looking at doing some consulting RFPs, and quite probably 2 of them, one focusing on staffing and infrastructure of buildings, and secondly, looking at how do we identify and intervene with mental health issues townwide, not just in schools. And that's where we're looking for RFPs. It turns out we're actually fairly ahead of the curve as a town, and trying to find RFPs that are, we have both mental health and security RFP bullet points of things we want to have covered. Trying to find a price point for these without going out to bid has been a little challenge. We can't get the RFPs out in time for town meeting. So we're trying to find similar towns with RFPs, say, here's the right price that we think it's going to cost to ask town meeting for the money. So we aren't there yet, so that's why it says XXX. It's not the rating of the bond of the movie. It's the dollar value. I do expect to have, in fact, so myself and Tom Clay are both on that task force, and I'm working on the security side. He's working on the mental health side. We hope to have some numbers for Tuesday, if not for town meetings. This will be a hard number at that point, but right now it's still to be determined.
You speak eloquently about this, but I noticed from the footnote that the selectmen haven't yet recommended this.
They're not going to recommend until there's a price tag on it.
I have a
Denali.
question.
Denali?
Again, in terms of gun safety, I know that it's essential for guns to be stored in a place where they are not accessible. Is the town willing, is someone in the town willing to have a meeting for gun owners to talk about the importance of safe storage of guns and encourage it, and perhaps, have a list of safes that could be used or something? Because I'd like, in most of these cases, the young person who has done it has stolen an adult's gun, and so storage of the weapons concerns me.
I'm not opposed to that concept. I think in Massachusetts, Massachusetts gun laws are much tougher than they are in Florida and even Connecticut at the time. And we're pretty strict on how guns are stored. They must be locked and either locked and also inaccessible. So typically it's a trigger lock or a lock through the action, and then also either a safe or a lockbox. So gun owners should know that. I mean, if you have a firearm ID card or a license to carry, you've gone through training and you know the laws. But if the police department wanted to have a information campaign, that's fine. Yeah, I wouldn't. I think it probably belongs with the police department, not with the selectmen, because they issue the permits and they know the laws better than anybody else because they enforce them.
And someone just said, or maybe the health department.
Yeah, I think the police actually are, the police chief, it's the police chief's discretion to issue license to carry, and so I would say that the police department should be the lead on that, but I'm not going to speak for Tom. He's has his own department to run.
Moving right along. Part 3.
So Part 3 is a request to appropriate $208,000 from water enterprise retained earnings into the water reserve fund, because back in July, the water main actually failed on Forest Road, Cross Road, and George Avenue in Nabnasset. And so the water department does have a reserve fund that is, I believe it's $250,000 that a few years ago we created. They pulled off that fund to actually pay to replace that water main because it was beyond repair. So they want to replenish their reserve fund because it is only just October and they have the year to go through. So the $8,000 is to cover overtime related to repairing that or replacing that main, and the $200,000 is because of the cost of the contract to do so. So it will be out of water retained earnings because, as you all know, it is an enterprise fund.
Article 3.
We have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Do you then also work in another 200,000 when the real budget comes around?
So They have retained earnings in the water enterprise, so this will come out of that fund. But they were going to replace Forest Road and those mains in the future, so it's just they moved that expense forward. So that will not be replenished in the water enterprise. It's coming out of that into the water reserve account.
Article 3, approve fiscal year 19 budget transfers.
Sure. This is for the finance department. We actually had 2 retirements this year. Our town accountant, after 16-plus years, Alice Farrow, retired in August. And Peggy Halverson, the assistant tax collector, retired after 40 years with the town. So we had 2 voids, and whenever we have a retirement or something like this, we always look at our staffing needs and whatnot. And so what we're trying to do here is put a full-time senior assistant into the assessor's office, with the Article 11 being proposed tonight, and with several changes with the Massachusetts Modernization Act. They have a need for additional staff. The tax collector, however, needs more sporadic staff just during busy times, so we're actually going to reduce time in that department. So overall, what we're trying to do is transfer money from the town accountant personal services to the assessors to fund that position for this year. But the whole restructuring will save the town in between $20,000 and $29,000 for the year.
Great. Article 4, approve fiscal year 19 capital appropriations.
So we have one. At the annual town meeting, we, the town, voted to add water to Vinebrook Road, and did it through a betterment, which means that the residents of that road would pay for the water improvement incrementally over, I think it's 20 years. At the time, we had included the water mains and repaving of the road. And the question came up, well, should that road have been paved by the town anyway? So there is I think a packet from the selectmen's meeting that said that it was part of a pavement planning program. Actually, it was not in this year's pavement planning program, but it was certainly a road in pretty tough shape. If you've ever been down to Kennedy Pond, you've been on that road, you know it's cracked and had grass growing through the cracks. So it was in need of repair. So the towns agreed that rather than having that repaving done as a betterment, the water still does a betterment, but the paving would be paid for by the town as we would any other road that was in tough shape. So this money is to sort of change that spending from betterment to town.
Okay. Article 5, fiscal year 19 asphalt plant monitoring appropriations.
So Newport Materials is the proponent or the builder of an asphalt plant, which has been a subject of a lot of debate in this town for about 9 years. As part of the settlement, they can build that plant, and we expect, as we've heard from them, that it will get built next year, be in operation next fall or next summer. And as part of the agreement also, they're paying for ongoing testing of air, noise, water, to make sure that we don't have any health risk to our residents from the plant. Now, if you're going to do that correctly, you have to have a baseline. Otherwise, who knows what the level was before the plant was built. So we've, the town board of health and certainly the residents in the area have agreed we should have testing for air and noise baselines that the town would do, so that if we have ongoing record-keeping after that, we can say it's increasing from the pre-construction status. And to answer the question that maybe you haven't asked yet is, yes, we will make sure we do it after we finish construction on Route 40, so we don't pick up all the background noise of pavers and wheelers and so forth. So the $40,000 is what Jeff Stevens from the Health Department thinks is a good number to give us good baselines for air and noise.
But I noticed the Finance Committee has recommends $10,000.
So the initial request was for $10,000 for noise only, and after talking to some residents and with Jeff, we thought we should add air quality as well. So he had one estimate from GZA, which was, I think, around 15 to 20. So out of abundance of caution, the selectmen went for 40 to make sure we can do it right. And the FinCom has not met since then, so they will have to take it up either before town meeting or right before town meeting. But I won't speak to their vote, but certainly the 4 to 10, hopefully they'll support the 40.
You know, Bob, I would say I was at the Finance Committee when Jeff went to present, and they actually encouraged him to broaden his testing. We had a long discussion at the Finance Committee
30 minute,
meeting,
yeah.
30 minutes about that. So I would be very surprised if they don't. And we also threw water in there too, so I think they'll be pleased with that, so.
Thank you. Article 6, acquisition of 63 Main Street.
So, breaking news is that we have had an offer from the town accepted by the owner of 63 Main Street, so there will be a price tag on this at town meeting. The offer was $600,000, that was accepted. So that's, the reality is the house has been, of course, this is the one that burned about 2-3 years ago. It's been sitting unmaintained for some time. About 6 months ago, the selectmen asked Judy to look at how does the town procure this. It moved very slowly for 5.5 months, and then in 2 weeks, we had the owner say, well, I want bids by last Friday. So at the selectmen's meeting, we had executive session quickly and put together a strategy for bidding. On Friday, no bid met the owner's minimum, so they rebid it, and that was due yesterday at noon time, I believe. And this morning, we learned about 10 o'clock or so that we were the winner. So now it goes to town meeting. It will take a 2/3 vote of town meeting because it's a purchase of real property. You know, if the town does, town meeting does agree to buy it, we need to, I've been in it, Georgie's been in it. It's actually in pretty good shape. The roof burned off, the attic burned off. The first and second floors are intact. Structurally, I'm not an engineer, but there's like 0 fire damage. They've pulled all the plaster out, so there's really no mold in there. It's in really pretty good shape. Now, first we have to do is have our building inspector try to get it sealed up for winter. We can't do anything to it that quickly. We'll probably bring in Don Mills, who's working on Rodenbush, to take a look and say, is this thing salvageable? And if so, at what cost? And thirdly, my inclination, talking to the Board of Selectmen next week, but we probably would, well, if town meeting approves this, so it would be a week after that, after town meeting, quite possibly forming a committee of someone from Main Street that is in the butter, someone from part of the Primtown Building Committee, Selectmen, FinCom, assortment of school committee, assortment of boards to look at what is the best use for this property. It's, you know, it's been a priority of ours to save the structure if we can, certainly save the facade if we can't maintain that character of the building. It's been there for 130 years. I'd like to keep it there for a while longer. But if you don't control it, we can't do anything with it. So the first step is to control it, and then as a town decide what to do with what's really an iconic piece of our town center.
Diane?
So, at town meeting, how are you going to address the numerous questions that you're all going to get about voters trying to decide whether or not we should invest, but we don't know yet what you're going to do with the building? So that we know from history, it is going to come up.
Yeah, I agree.
So people won't be inclined to commit, or they may not be inclined to commit unless, for some people, they know what you're going to do with the building, right? So how is that going to be handled, addressed, or?
I mean, we're going to say, I think what I kind of just said, which is that it's a priority of the board, and I think a large number of people in town, to preserve that property as it looks now if we can. That wouldn't happen if we don't control it. It will probably become a developer's parcel, and we were looking at what the town has looked at what could go in there, and it could be, you know, multiple buildings, not just the one. 2, maybe 3 if they're creative. So first is we have to buy it to preserve it. Secondly, we want to be sensitive to the fact that this is an iconic structure, where we've got neighbors who don't want to have a big change to the neighborhood and traffic and so forth. So hence the idea of forming a committee that would include the neighborhood to consider what should be done. And I also want to include the Permanent Town Building Committee, because those are the folks that set up priorities. They know what our long-term needs are, and they know what can fit in that parcel. They don't know for sure, because we haven't owned it, but once we get our control of it, they can make a better judgment. So it's going to be, if you don't control it, we lose it forever. You never get a chance to pick up property and historic property in a town center at distressed prices. This is this could be the most transformative purchase since East Boston camps for the town. And if we don't take it, we don't see it again in our lifetimes.
Denali.
I missed the price tag,
600,000.
600, thank you.
May I just add, the amount that will be in the warrant, in the motions, will probably be more than that, because I am seeking prices to secure the building and to do environmental testing. So you will see a higher number than that at town meeting, just so you know.
How much land was there?
2.93 acres. And it does abut the town hall parking lot, too.
And Rodenbush.
And Rodenbush, right.
Are there any wetlands?
I don't believe there are on that parcel, but I'm
It's
not
minor.
positive.
I think the,
Trail back there too, right?
It's a
Right.
beautiful piece of property. There's a tennis court back there. There's a nice barn. It's mostly grass in the back.
yeah.
And
Tall
then, of course,
grass.
the town owns a huge parcel behind Rodenbush and the town hall. So it's actually a very lovely parcel.
Nothing else? Article 7,
All right,
my
so,
second favorite article.
Second
Reduce
favorite
amount
article.
raised by taxes.
I'm just going to preemptively say that Articles 7, 8, and 9 all have to do with premium on bonds. So I'm going to explain what that is really quickly, because it applies to all three articles. So when the town issues a bond, we often do so with a premium, which is an additional amount of money that the town gives to us to pay for closing costs. Normally, we have leftover money. It's called the premium surplus. And how we account for that is basically these three articles here. So that changed in November of 2016, how we handle it with the Municipal Modernization
Modernization
Act.
Act.
Thank you. That always gets me. So prior to 2016, this is how we handle the excess premium. Basically, we amortize it over the life of the loan, and we see it every year in this article, the reduced amount raised by taxes. So this is the amount that's due on that schedule to be amortized. Article 7 is as simple as that. Very simple, right?
Sounds simple. We trust you, Dan.
I'm trying not to put everybody to sleep at town meeting either, but. So, Article 8, this is just a timing issue, really. We authorized the bonding of the fire station in March of 2015. So we didn't permanently bond it, the first $10 million until February of 2018. So there's a timing issue as to how we account for this premium. So in that original language, we didn't have this here that allows us to keep the premium with the project cost. So that's all we're asking you to do. So we have an extra $265,000 in premium. We want to just apply that towards the construction cost rather than have to borrow more money. That's it.
Okay, and
Just trust me on this one.
But does that mean that if you didn't do that, you would have had to ask for more money for
Nope.
the fire station?
No, it doesn't. So we asked the DOR this question too, because we thought it would come up. I just didn't know from who, but thank you for it. So not doing this is actually very complicated. We'd have to set aside that $265,000 in a separate fund to be reappropriated at future town meeting for a use of 20 or more years for a capital project. Then we have to amortize that amount throughout the life of the fire station bond. And that actually creates a budget deficit each year for the next 20 years. So we don't want to do that. It's just overly complicated and, yeah.
You just find amortized.
Amortize, define amortize. So if we have a pot of money at $265,000, that's basically spread over 20 years.
And
And Article 9 is the same concept as Article 8. It's just a catch-all for any of those timing issues. So in all future bond issues moving forward, we will have this language in there, so I'll never have to explain this again. That's my goal.
I move in favor of the question.
Oh, okay. Article 10.
So, this is a accident of history, literally an accident of history. Back in 1990, so 25, 30 years ago, the town put in place a senior tax work-off program. And today it involves 25 seniors, 20 seniors and 5 veteran spots are earmarked. And seniors can work at various town departments, earning up to $1,500 per year that gets applied to their property taxes. It's been very popular. In fact, we have more applicants than we ever can possibly fill, and so we have a lottery system to actually award these spots. A citizen issue suggested maybe it should be means tested. And since I think the selectmen should review our policy every 25 years, we did take a look at it. In the process of taking a look at it, we did not actually change the process. It will still not be means tested. However, we learned that the town should have adopted this under Mass General Law, Chapter 59, 25 or 30 years ago, and we can find a record that it ever did. So we've had a very popular program operating without correct authorization for quite some time. I don't expect anyone to be opposed to this, but once you know that something has not been done right, you have to fix it. So this fixes a mistake that's been around for quite a long time, probably longer than I've been in town, roughly. We can't blame Jody for this one. So
I found the problem and fixed it. But do you want to speak to the representative part of this, which is new? Or do you want me to speak to that?
Working for someone else?
Yeah, so, yeah, the new wrinkle is that historically it's been the case that the senior doing the work got the tax benefit. You know, we do have seniors who are, for various reasons, disabled, but in fact may be most in need of the tax benefit. So what the change to the policy would be is to allow somebody basically to work in the stead of another senior to earn a tax credit for them. So it's basically, it's a volunteer work to get a tax credit for another senior, which I think is a really good, worthwhile thing for the town to do. Yes?
Paul.
And I'll point out that historically, veterans have been able to do that in the past, so it's just granting the same thing to seniors.
Okay. Article 11. Elizabeth.
All right, we have a show for this one. So this article is for low-income senior tax relief, and go ahead, Laura. So the history of this article is that at our annual town meeting in 2017, there was a citizens petition requesting that we implement senior tax relief, and we decided at that time that that particular petition wasn't exactly appropriate for our town, and we wanted time to make sure that we crafted something that would work for Westford. So the selectmen put together a committee 18 months ago, and it was named the Slider Committee, Senior Low Income and Disabled Tax Relief Committee. You may recall in the spring we did pass an article to petition the state to allow tax relief for folks with disabilities. Today we're here to talk about tax relief for seniors. We have received input from numerous committees and town employees, and you'll see some names on the next slide. And we were striving to balance the ease of implementation with reaching the homeowners who had the most need. And the committee spent the past 18 months researching what has been done in other communities in the state of Massachusetts, what's been done in other states, what's legal, what would get the help to the right people. And what we bring today is a proposal that we would like to try a program for 3 years, and it's been built on all of this research. And just a quick thank you to folks who have served on this committee. They were meeting every Wednesday morning at 8 a.m., I think, for 18 months, so they have put in a considerable number of hours for the benefit of the town. So thank you to all the folks here and on the numerous boards and committees who gave input. So our goals were first to identify the target population, and what we're here today is to discuss a program just for seniors, and then to design a program that is simple to implement and gets the benefit to the individuals with the most need, and then also to determine how to pay for the program. So what we learned is that our low-income homeowners in Westford are typically seniors. And we have programs in place for people having a temporary difficulty paying their property taxes, but what we're talking about is folks who have lived here for 30 or 40 years and now find themselves living on their pension and struggling to pay their property taxes. And I don't think anyone would be surprised to hear that property tax increases in the community have surpassed the Social Security and pension increases that our seniors have seen. The Massachusetts Circuit Breaker program sets a target of paying no more than 10% of your income to property taxes. And so based on that program, we made a chart here. If you look at someone with a property value of $300,000, their property tax is $4,854. If their income is $35,000, which is quite typical according to the social workers at the senior center, those individuals would be paying 14% of their income in property taxes. So we could, mix up this chart with various income and property values, but this gives you an example of what we're talking about. The qualifications for the proposed program are first that you have to qualify for the Circuit Breaker program, and that's the state program helping seniors who are paying more than 10% of their income to local taxes. The second qualification is that you have to be 65 or older, and we are targeting this to homeowners with the 80%, whose home value is 80% of the median assessed value of the single family home. Right now, that would be a home assessed at $400,000 or less. That captures 33% of our homeowners. The asset limit is 2 times the 41C asset limit, and 41C is a local program where seniors can receive up to a $2,000 a year benefit. And I want to point out that home equity is not considered in the asset limit. And then at the bottom, you'll see the income limits. These income limits are based on the state Circuit Breaker program, and they vary a little bit for single, head of household, or married. And really what we tried to do was to tie these qualifications to existing programs that will change as incomes change, as our median assessed value changes. We didn't want to put hard numbers in here that we then have to go back and change. We want this program to be able to evolve in the next few years. So a little bit more about the financial model. It's a variable benefit to homeowners, so it's designed so that homeowners with greater need will receive a greater portion of the benefit. The maximum benefit to any homeowner will be 50% of their tax bill, and it's also important to point out that we will first take into consideration what benefits they are already receiving from the state and local programs. Those will be applied first, and then we will apply this program. The range of benefit will be between 0 on the low end and $3,236, which that equals 50% of the tax bill of a home assessed at $400,000. So there you'd be looking at someone with the highest value of home and the lowest income. If they're living on less than $20,000 a year, for example, you can see where they would need the most assistance. We know that there will be a maximum of 347 eligible homeowners, and that's based on participation in the Circuit Breaker program. The funding source for this is the assessor's overlay account, and this is where I get to rival Dan with explaining fun financial, our fun accounting here. So the assessor's overlay account is required by the state, where the town sets aside money every year. Am I getting it right so far, Dan? To cover future liabilities related to real estate taxes. And if someone comes back and challenges taxes, or if there's an outstanding question, we keep money in that overlay account to settle those issues down the road. Periodically, the assessors will release money from that account if they determine that we have more in that account than potential liabilities. And in the past, that money has gone towards capital or to balance the budget if we need a little bit more money to do that. So the next line here, the maximum cost to the community will be 0.25% of the levy. Again, not putting in a hard number, but tying it to a number that's changing in the coming years. And if the program were to start this year, that would be $162,000. The assessors feel that that is a reasonable amount that we can commit to for 3 years out of the overlay account. We did put a 3-year sunset clause into this program so that we have time to assess it, see how it's going, and we anticipate gathering data in years 1 and into year 2, and then determine what modifications we need to make, and then come back to the community and decide if we want to continue this program indefinitely or if we need to make changes, and we will propose them at that time. So in summary, the target residents are those who are just above the limits for the local 41C program, and that is those folks are at 200% of the federal poverty limit. We were attempting to balance simplicity of the program, of implementing the program, with targeting those most in need. We're limiting the scope by putting it at 1/4% of the budget and having the money come out of the overlay account. The 3-year sunset clause will allow us to revisit this in a timely manner and evaluate it and decide if it's working before we make a larger commitment. And finally, since taxes and exemptions are governed by Massachusetts general laws, this requires a special act by the legislature to approve the tax relief articles. So if with an affirmative vote today, we will petition the state to pass this, and then it will come back to town meeting for adoption before it gets implemented. So you will see this again. We are not committing funds today. The vote today is to allow us to send this to the state and begin that process. I think that's everything. 8 minutes? All right.
It's good enough.
Any questions? Yes, Bob.
This is an awful lot to take in.
Is this too much? Is it too long?
Well, no. You've probably made it fairly simple. Have you taken this show on the road? Have you given it elsewhere?
To the Finance Committee, not all the slides. We talked about it at Finance Committee. We didn't.
Not the senior center, or?
No. We have earlier versions of this have been presented to seniors in sessions at the Cameron.
How did that go?
It went very well. In fact, we had a number of sessions before the annual town meeting when we were hoping to get this done the first time, and we've done a couple since then, and they basically said, we've heard enough, just vote on it already. We're ready to go. I'll also point out that it is complicated. Anyone at home who is trying to figure this out by reading the motions document has my sympathy. As was pointed out, the committee's met for 1.5 years on this, and I would suggest that anyone go to the packets online in the document management system for the Board of Selectmen's meeting of September 25th and for the FinCom meeting on September 13th, where Elizabeth presented a lot of this, and we have some backup material, including a very short introductory summary and so forth, and a 1-page document with examples on the back. And if you can read that before town meeting, you'll be in much better shape to vote.
Thank you, Paul.
Diane?
Are the resources needed to manage this program negligible, or, going through everyone's
Right.
assets and?
Right, so there are go ahead, you can speak about it.
That's part of the reason for Article 3. We're increasing the senior assistant position in the assessor's office by 15 hours per week, knowing that this program could come on.
I missed that, sorry.
Okay.
How does money get put into the assessor's overlay account? Where do they?
That's where I come in. It's part of the tax rate setting process. Overlay isn't voted at town meeting. It's basically, when we go to set our tax rate around this time of year, I work into a financial model an amount of money, about $500,000, that we reserve for the overlay, and then we put everything into this fancy website that the state has, and we hit calculate, and that spits out the overlay number. Because that's the only wiggle room we have, because I'm getting more complicated than I probably need to be, but the tax rate is rounded to the first 2 digits, so it usually creates some sort of tax levy room there that we need a mechanism to absorb, and that's why the overlay is.
Oh, so that little extra gets
Yes.
stashed there.
So basically, like that 500,000 will probably get reduced to 470 once we calculate tax rate. So we need that wiggle room to make it work.
Any else? Yes?
You mentioned that the overlay account has this other purpose, right, for the liabilities. How often does that happen?
I think we recently just settled some appellate tax board cases going back to 2004. So, the state isn't very quick about settling these cases, especially with all like the telephone poles and the utilities. So it doesn't happen often, but when it happens, we need to have the money there in order to pay the amount. Otherwise, we're scrambling for a town meeting appropriation to do so.
Our,
I think you just answered my next question, which would be where does it come from if it's empty?
Town meeting, yep. Which we're not empty, by the way.
Any other questions, suggestions? You're presenting this again to the selectmen?
no,
You're all done?
we've already voted, and we did not, the selectmen had heard it all months ago, so when we voted last week, we didn't go through all the details.
We're sick of it.
The selectmen heard the parameters and, an outline of it in June, so they were comfortable with.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you. And finally, Article 12.
So the last article is actually asking the town to approve a payment in lieu of taxes, which is commonly referred to as a pilot, and it's with Westford Solar Holdings. So there are actually 2 solar parks up in, off of Commerce Way, which is up in 540 Groton Road, and each is approximately 20 acres, and they generate approximately in 17 about $80,000 of tax revenue. So solar farms statewide are beginning to challenge their assessments because back in the 1980s there was a law, a Mass General law, that said solar farms were exempt from public taxation. So in every case that's been challenged, they have won and they have been tax exempt. So basically our principal assessor, Paul Plouffe, went to these people and asked if they would negotiate a pilot, which basically would replace their tax assessment. And they have agreed to this. We've been talking about it for a while. And the pilot would basically allow them to pay 50% of the market value for 15 years. And why would we do this? Well, because if they went and challenged us, we could have nothing, zero. And they feel like they do owe some taxes. They want to be a good neighbor to the town, and they feel like that they do owe the town something. So to us, it guarantees some taxable income for the town for the next 15 years. If we don't do it, we're at risk for losing everything if it's challenged. So that's pretty much it. We do have a spreadsheet to show there is depreciation over the years, so the value goes down each year as it's appreciated. Yes,
Yeah,
Diane?
Sorry.
Yeah.
So what's the comparison of what they have been paying?
Yep.
Versus, and again, approximate or estimate what they could be paying in the future?
Well, it's basically the agreement, and I do have a spreadsheet, but Susan says fonts of no less than 20 for town meetings, so it doesn't fit on that. But basically, it's going to be 50% of what they would have.
And what are they paying now?
Well, so in 17, it was about $80,000. In 17, it'll be about $70,000, and so on, because their equipment depreciates.
So on average, over the next 13 years of the pilot, they'll be paying $21,500 per year, but the actual assessment would have been around $43,000 on average.
But it does guarantee us taxable income from the property, and we think that's a good thing.
Any questions? Laura?
Well, they sound like a nice company. The fact that they're willing to pay money makes it sound like a nice company. But like, if they sold it or the ownership, does it like stay with the property or does it stay with the company? Like, who's this negotiating?
Well, you know what, I need to check on that. The pilot is with the company, I believe. I do have it here. It's with Westford Solar Holdings LLC. So, in my opinion, and I haven't read through this, and I will do that to answer your question for town meeting, but in my opinion, it probably would need to be renegotiated if they sold it, but I will check on that. I think it's a very good question.
It says here they can assign it with consent from the town.
Okay, so they can assign it, but is it required that they assign it?
It would be good if it was done like a property easement, because the easement goes with the property, not with the owners.
Yeah, so I'll check on that, but it looks like they can assign it. I don't know if they are required to assign it.
Okay. Well, that completes the discussion for tonight. All that remains is for you, the voter, to go to special town meeting. It will be held Monday, October 15th, at the Abbott School Gym, and it begins at 7 p.m., not 7:30 p.m. as in years past. Thanks to Jody Ross, Scott Hazelton, Dan O'Donnell, Elizabeth Alameda, and Susan Spooler for participating in the event tonight. It was sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Westford as part of the voter education program, and thanks to everybody who contributed to the program tonight. Don't forget that it's a special town meeting, and that requires a quorum of 200 people to initiate the meeting. So it's important that as many people as possible come to the special town meeting. Well, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
3 minutes to get home.